Hi, I'm Ashley, and you are listening and watching Confidence in Coffee. What if I was to tell you that you can find confidence despite any of your circumstances, good or bad? I'm going to help you navigate the waters of womanhood, whatever season that is in. Whether it's marriage, singleness, or you're drowning in children, I'm going to help you find confidence and hope through Christ. I'm going to leave you with plenty of encouragement and practical tips to overcome those limiting beliefs so you can live a life well. Plus, you know we're going to find a few laughs along the way. So grab your favorite cup of coffee and join me as we chat confidence and coffee. What was your what resonated with you to share those lessons?
Well, I was, because I just felt lost because I was doing everything right in my life, but I didn't feel the joy that I knew that I had in God.
Right. Oh, Bonnie. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
I just felt like in my spirit, something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was because I am such, like the, yeah, you'll know more about my story, friends, as you read the book, but I grew up, basically with resilience. And at that time in my life earlier, and every woman has those seasons, especially during the pandemic, where you've had to be strong. But I think what we need to learn is that it doesn't mean we have to be strong indefinitely. It's temporarily, our bodies are designed to absorb, like a shock absorber, all the toughness and putting your heart to the side. But the nervous system wasn't designed to hold all of that negative stress, emotion, challenges, pressures indeterminately, like forever. The body will start telling you that it's time for you to replenish what you poured out. So
Yeah,
it's not
you shared
negative.
that, like you started to feel things physically.
Yes, for me, my hair started falling out.
Yeah.
And so like at first I just go like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's like after I had my baby, some hormonal thing. I just ignored it. And then next I started getting hives. Oh, maybe I'm allergic to something. Oh, maybe it's allergy season, more and more. And so for me, all these things kind of started adding up. But the thing that really got me was insomnia. As a mom, oh my gosh, if you can't sleep, or as an entrepreneur, whatever it is, you start getting irritable, you start forgetting things, and life becomes a chore. You start waking up, suddenly life is like mush, like walking through mud. And that's when I was like, you know what? Something's not right here. I lead so many communities of faith, and I'm sharing the gospel and encouraging women. I'm like, I'm not feeling the joy and peace I'm telling everybody about. So this began my journey. I looked up the word breathe and breath in the Bible, and there's over 1,000 references to the word breathe and breath. And when I categorized them, they fell into 4 areas of wellness. And that's what's in the book. So then that's when I started saying, okay, God, first I felt ashamed. But then when I saw Matthew 11:28, where Jesus said, come to me, those who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Well, we don't read the next verse because it says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, and you will find rest. So those are 3 action words. Yes, verse 27 says, come to me weary and heavy laden. That means number one, negative emotions are not bad. They're very important, that will lead us to where Jesus wants to be with us. And where is that place? It's to find rest. It's action we have to learn. So for people that are like us in our generation, where we have known everything about being resilient, starting our own business, being content creators, or being moms, decorating, all the left brain stuff, but we don't know very much about what can bring me joy, what can bring me peace. Most women don't know, myself included. So I realize I have permission to explore what that is, because Jesus said we're to find rest together with him. When Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, that indicates 2 animals working together to till the soil to accomplish a work together. What is that work he wants to do with us? It's to find rest. So that's so powerful. Once, like, the part of me that's like very action oriented, God gave me a goal because he knew that's the kind of person I am. So then I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, how can I be learn most about different ways to find rest with Jesus? And so rest is also not in action. There's a very important verse. People used to quote it to me, and I felt shamed because when I was anxious and worried, and I would finally get my nerve to confide in someone, I know they were well meaning, but they would say to me, Bonnie, you're not trusting God enough. You need to be still and know that God is God. You're not being still. You're too busy. You're too focused on what you're doing. And I felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not trusting God. But then I double clicked on the phrase be still. It doesn't mean to do nothing. It literally means to loosen your grip and to relax. And to know God isn't a knowledge knowing, it's an experience. The root word is yada, which is to personally experience God. So, in order for us to experience God's peace and joy, we need to do things to relax. I mean, think about it, right? Ashley, think back on your fondest memories of you and your husband, whether dating or the first blossom of wedded life, or think about a best friend. What were some of your fondest memories, or with your child? What were those most precious memories? Didn't they happen when you felt relaxed?
They did. They did. You know, Bonnie, just this past weekend, it could make me, I don't know why it's so silly, but it makes me emotional. And I think it's because of what I shared personally. And this is about Bonnie. Okay. But Bonnie, I think we could be friends. I literally think that we could just conversate all day. That's how you made me feel in your book. So you're like my first person where I reached out and I asked you to be on my podcast, by the way. Usually I don't do that. I really just resonate with you. This past weekend, Bonnie, my husband planned like this random trip to go to the carnival. Like it's apple blossom here. It's a big deal, girl. It's a big deal. They had a carnival. And the last few times we went to a carnival in the Outer Banks, it was terrible. I call it rip off place. Okay. But this carnival was like a mini Disney World. And I haven't felt that relaxed. And my kids were having a great time. And I was just spending time with them. And I was spending time with my husband. And it was busy, but it was beautiful. And we were laughing. And I got in the car after that day at the carnival. And I looked at my husband and I said, thank you, because this fed my soul in a way that I hadn't been fed in a long time. Sorry, I don't know why it's because it's carnival trip, but I felt so fulfilled in that car. I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel wore out. I didn't feel exhausted. I didn't feel overwhelmed. My ears weren't buzzing. I felt relaxed and happy, and I watched my kids be happy. And I hadn't felt that way in a long time. And that is a memory that I'll cherish forever. And I didn't have to create it, Bonnie, because creating those moments when I tried to do it in the past were exhausting. And I think moms were so bad at that. Let's create a memory. But it was in the spontaneous, in the moment, in the present. It did not matter the circumstance that I felt the most nourished. And I will take that with me forever.
Yeah, I really feel that. I get emotional too.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like I went to the carnival with my kids, but for me, it was so much more bigger than that. I told my husband, I was like, thank you. Thank you.
Well, your husband sounds like a kind of person that really values that time with you and wants to see you light up with joy and to see you relaxed. And
And I
so,
did. I made a decision to just be a kid. Like you said, like you experienced your childhood, but also you were a mother, right? Like for me, like I had, and I've heard that from so many women and so many clients who go through motherhood. And for me, it was like I let go. Like I was like having fun with my kids and my kids were laughing at me. I was like, put your hands up. This is amazing. And I just let go. I let go of the perfection. I let go of the plan. I let go of the all of it. We ate the carnival food, okay? We ate the nachos and we just had fun and it was it was fabulous. It was amazing and I needed that. The Lord knew that I needed that. And I believe honestly it was the catalyst of what that new season socially looks like for me. Three people.
Yeah, so I think that's a very, very powerful story and example for us to learn from, because experiences is what will help release our stress. I was on a podcast once and it was the last question in the podcast. She's like, okay, so Bonnie, you have two boys, they're teenagers now. Cause I had these panic attacks when they were just 3 years old and a baby. Like, well, how are you able to, manage your anxiety and heal from depression? And then now they're teenagers. Like, give me a parenting tip. And I was like, okay, that's another big, show we can do. But I said, if I were to sum up in a nutshell, it's experiences. Experiences is what makes children stress resilient. It's not the left brain telling them, stop stressing, why are you worrying, don't you know, and going through the list of logical reasons why they shouldn't stress, because your brain has two parts. Your brain has the left brain, that's the logical part. You use the left brain, we use the left brain for problem solving. Okay, but the right brain is the emotional part of our brain. That's where we feel emotions, whether it's fear or worry or sadness. Now, guess which part of the brain needs to get activated to lower stress and anxiety? Is it using the left brain or the right brain? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I would think, no, I would think to lower anxiety, it would be the left part of the brain.
Yes. So studies show it's the right brain that lowers stress and anxiety.
It's
It's
true. Wow.
it's not to say we don't want to think correctly, but if you're talking about lowering cortisol, that's a stress hormone, and releasing serotonin, feeling better, mood lifting.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's the right brain. It's the experiential part of our brain. So the five senses. So any activity that uses the five senses, if it's one, that's still good. For instance, taking a walk is powerful because it uses all the senses. Tactile, okay, you're walking. Second, you're hearing the birds. Third, you might be feeling, you will be, my son just even said, hey, the air smells like spring.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So it's like using all your senses. Okay. So it's very powerful. But anything you do to use your hands, so you're at the carnival, you're eating, that's full sensory experiences. And that is what is going to help your kids to not drain their emotional accounts, their emotional reserves. The fuller it is, the more they can be resilient. So as they grow up, there's a lot of stresses, maybe pressures, peer pressure, there's testing, there's homework, there's drama, whether you're a girl or a boy, there's always drama, whether it's sports or social situation. How do you help your child be more resilient? It's the same answer that I had to learn for myself, Ashley. I had to make sure I have experiences in my day or my week, a weekly rhythm, a daily rhythm, or a monthly rhythm where I am refilling my soul with experiences where I can be relaxed. And that's why it's a challenge, because it's very vulnerable, very countercultural to say, I'm worthy of peace and joy, even if it helps nobody, even if it produces no work and no one can see it. And I have no pictures to share on Instagram for it. Because you can't enjoy the moment if you're focused on the work.
Yeah.
I know that as, content creators, there are times where we're doing our work, right?
All the time. All
Yeah,
the
so
time.
that's
Yeah.
fine, but we need space where we're not doing any work and we're just having fun. And this is what helped my kids to be resilient. I started this when they were little, toddler, because I was having anxiety and panic attacks. So as I learned about this, Ashley, I said, okay, we're going to do a whiteboard. I called it Family Adventures because, I had boys. So I had to give it a cool name for boys, but personally, it was my joy list. So I said, okay, everybody think of what would make you happy. Everybody, I had the whiteboard and my kids couldn't read. So I drew little pictures, stick figures. And I would have Eric, my husband, also put in his ideas. I go, okay, everybody choose one, like your favorite one. And there were simple things like, I want to go out for ice cream, or, oh, I want to go to, the museum. And for me, it was something else. Like, I want to go hiking, or I want to have a picnic lunch. And Eric's was something else. So every weekend, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, we then pick one. I said, okay, circle the one you want. And then every Saturday or Sunday, we would put it in the calendar. And we continue it today, Ashley. So no matter what happens during the week, we know we're going to come together as a family. We're going to have fun. And you know what? Our children love seeing us have fun.
Yes. Yeah,
It makes them happy.
it does.
And so you bond. So just to underscore what you're saying, Ashley, is that soul care is nurturing the little girl in you. And that's biblical. It's not just only psychologically,
Say that. Yeah, it's biblical.
it's
Touch on
biblical.
that, please.
Yeah,
Because
okay. Because
I coach kind of like I go through a process in my program where we get to a point where you have to write a letter to yourself, the younger self of of you, and tell her what she deserves. And I've had a few people concerned about that because they were like, is that biblical? Is that new age? And I'm like, it was the best thing I ever did for myself when I had to heal my own traumas. Would you please touch on that?
okay, well, Jesus, the one place where it's so marked and intentional were when the disciples tried to shoo away the children. Like Jesus doesn't have time. Okay, we don't have time for play. You guys are, he's busy. He's on to important things, and they push them away. And Jesus said, "No, let the children come to me." He said, "The greatest in the kingdom is to have a faith as a child." Those are his words. It's not my words. So, in order for us to experience the kingdom, remember the word experience, not just know about God's
Ooh,
kingdom. To experience his kingdom, we have to live life with faith as a child. Well, how do you know a child's doing well? In all trauma work, if a child has trauma, they sit there and they don't play. They don't cry. They make no indication that anything's wrong. Why? Because they're used to not being heard and they don't have any interest to play. They're fine being alone. That is actually signs of stress. So, sometimes we just train ourselves to smash that childlike curiosity, joy, and need. We think it's negative. No. If we're feeling some negative emotion, Jesus, come bring it to me. Let's find out, what can help replenish. What are you missing? And so Jesus said, those in the greatest in the kingdom is having faith as a child. And he says, when you welcome a child in my name, you're welcoming me.
mm-hmm.
This is a game changer for me, Ashley. And it really helps, like, yeah, just like you're guiding women in your ministry. It helps when I tell women, this is holy work when you take time to cut up a watermelon, make a little fruit bowl and freeze them and make time to enjoy it later, because Jesus, you're welcoming Jesus in that moment. You're enjoying, it's the difference between self-care and soul care. Self-care are things you do that help your body feel better or your emotions, but soul care is doing these practices with Jesus. So Jesus is saying, when you welcome that child within you, you are welcoming me.
Bonnie.
You're welcoming Jesus into your day. You see, because Jesus is not in the busyness, right? I mean, he'll empower you if you need to get it done. But if you want to experience that peace and joy with being with Jesus, trust me, if he were here in the skin right now, I know what Jesus will be doing tonight with me. We're going to make popcorn together.
I love it.
Popcorn. Yeah. I tell my kids that. I'm like, hey, I bet you Jesus loves popcorn. So when we're spending time together, we're doing movie nights together and we get to pick each one. We're spending time together with Jesus. Jesus is happy.
Yeah.
And I use this language with my kids, and my kids totally get it. They'll say
Yeah.
things like that. So when I say, hey, go to practice, go to soccer practice, because that's where you feel free. You need to do it because you love to do it. And Jesus is there with you. That's how you feel happy. That's how God made you. And so those are kind of the tough kind of situations where we have to say, for instance, for me, because I did heal from anxiety and panic attacks, I know they're so important. I'll say, Josh, it's important for you to go to soccer because that's what lights you up. Don't worry about your grades. You're just going to do your best, and that gives you a B or whatever it is. It's going to be okay. You don't have to get an A. You need to make sure that you feel that you're getting replenished. Now, some people might feel like, oh, we're lowering our standards for that reason. But guess what? My kids thrive. They actually perform better. I mean, that's a secret. I don't tell them that, but they perform better when they're not stressed.
Yeah. And they're not trying to
Right?
perform. It literally
Exactly.
means living in the moment,
Yeah.
being
Well,
in the
perform
moment.
meaning, yeah, not performing for anybody, but meaning like on their tests and stuff. So
Like
I,
they're, yeah, just like perfection. I guess seeking like everything has to be perfect and I have to get this grade and I have to like when the school tests come around for my kids, I always tell them because they're like, "Oh, we have these tests." I'm like, "And it's okay. It's a regular day. It's a regular test. Just do your best." That's what I
yeah,
tell them.
exactly. And then when you fill them with more experiences like the carnival, or have different ones in the weekend, that's going to fill their tank. That's when their right brain is going to dial down the overthinking. So for instance, if my son comes home and he's worried about a test, in the past I'm like, why are you worried? You've got this. That was me before. Now I might say that, but first I'll give him an experience. What that means is I'll say, oh, that feels heavy, huh? I know that's a lot of chapters. I said, hey, you want to have an apple or a pear, or are you thirsty? I'm offering him
Ooh.
refreshment first, not trying to change his mind. You have to help the child change his mood first. And I only know that because of myself, because I'm usually the most harshest. If I'm stressing, what do? My default is negative self-talk.
Hmm.
Exactly. What's your problem, Bonnie? Come on, get with it, focus. Da, 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 da. But studies show that when you push yourself harder, your brain actually experiences more anxiety. Then you can't think, you can't focus, and you're not able to. It actually causes procrastination.
How did you get to a point from the panic attacks and well, first off, how did you know you were having panic and anxiety? And then how did you like get from that? Because that's a stronghold to experiences, to really creating experiences for you. How did you define that? How did you go through that process?
Well, mine was very severe because before I was a mom, I've never had any anxiety. I was the girl that would, snowboard double black diamonds. I was a missionary in my 20s. Like I'm fine in every situation. I did inner city work, like with at-risk youth, that, had had to suffer through incarceration. Like I was never afraid. Okay. I'm just telling you to let you know that in my situation is very extreme. It's helpful in sharing all these tips because I just kind of let people know, hey, if this worked for me, I know that these are things, truths from scripture and science that will help, other people. So anyhow, but I suddenly, once I had my second child, I didn't know why I started having panic attacks. They were very severe. Every 2 hours, I would wake up choking because I couldn't breathe and my throat was narrowing. I'm not even worried. I'm sleeping, but every 2 hours I would be jolted awake. And then it started happening during the day. I literally was not worried because I got married later in life. So I was in my 30s. I had my second child when I was 40. So I already had a career in tech. I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I was worried about that I was conscious of. So I was really scared because I thought, oh, maybe there's something wrong with my health. But all the blood tests came back positive. I mean, sorry, negative. And that scared me more. Like I wanted something to be wrong with me physically rather than my mental health because I didn't know anything about it. And I felt it was shameful because I felt, oh, maybe my faith failed.
I struggled with that. That almost
Yeah.
killed me. Yeah.
So, but what happened was I didn't tell anybody. I said, okay, I'll see a therapist and, let's just fix this quietly. Nobody will know. The therapist, once I told him about how I wasn't aware of why I was having panic attacks so severely, he said, oh, this is a classic case of PTSD. And I said, and he's in charge of over 150 Christian therapists. I went to the top because I asked him for a reference. I figured after he hears me, why don't you pick a therapist that can help me? But he's a PTSD expert, and I didn't think like I had PTSD. I wasn't planning to work with him. But he said, this is classic case of PTSD. And I said, but I've never been physically abused or harmed. I've never been a soldier. And he said, well, did you know that emotional abuse and verbal abuse has the same impact as physical abuse? And I did not know that. So for the first time, I was like quiet. I'm like you, I love chatting, but I was like, no, I go, that doesn't make sense. I mean, this happened as a child. Okay, my mom was, she's not loving, but I mean, doesn't kill me. And he said, well, did you know a soldier doesn't experience anxiety or panic attacks when he's on the battlefield? When the soldier's strong, he's helping everybody. He's very resourceful. It's only when he comes home, when he's safe, then his nervous system, the way God designed it to be strong when he's fighting and helping others, it relaxes. And then your body is expressing what it could not at the time you had to be strong. So that right there was a game changer for me. Then I realized, oh, this is the new adventure you have me on, Jesus. Okay, no longer was I ashamed. That's when this ministry started. I'm like, I'm going to share this truth because so many women must be feeling ashamed that they're experiencing anxiety or stress or overthinking or insomnia or whatever stress brings you. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my faith. When in fact, it's the opposite. It's because you've been strong, because your faith has helped you to get through hard things. But it wasn't meant, we're not designed to indefinitely stay in that mode. Our body was designed to say, you know what? You need care. You need love. You need nurture. You need beauty. You need peace. You need joy. You need space where you're not performing or creating anything for anyone else other than receiving God's love and joy for yourself. And so that began the journey. I had to work through therapy. I need to work with a therapist to deal with childhood trauma. So I did EMDR therapy, but to help my body and emotions to feel better, so to dial down the physical symptoms, that's when I learned about soul care. So for instance, if somebody hasn't gone through trauma, but they are experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety because, circumstances, maybe, having to take care of kids or your work or some dysfunctional season in ministry, I don't know, it's situational. This book will help you to dial down and calm your emotions and body. But obviously, if there's things, if you're like me, who you've experienced some trauma, what I mean is, in your childhood, then you need a therapist to walk you through those specific things. So kind of two different things. Many people ask me, well, when do I know I need to see a therapist? And when do I need to know, like, I just need to take better care of myself?
Right.
So my answer is that, well, obviously, I want you to pick up my book because it gives you specific things to do for different areas of wellness. So learn and truly prioritize taking action. You can start with a monthly rhythm or a weekly, and then it'll go to a daily. But you need to do something to release your stress. If you do that for a while, you're addressing and taking action, okay? And you find that you're still feeling overwhelmed, you're still feeling stuck, your body's not improving in terms of your symptoms, then I would say, then see a therapist because there's some deeper issues, not because of your faith. I learned that through EMDR is that your brain has two places. One is an archival storage, and one is called your amygdala, your emotional self. So if you go through trauma, the body actually does not process it. So you will not just remember something happened to you, but you'll feel it. And the way God designed our bodies, you can't process it other than being able to talk about it. And if you get somebody experienced, they'll know which area to talk about. Does that make sense? So I think
That's
that freed me from
profound.
shame. Yeah, that freed me from shame because I'm like, well, I'm praying, I'm studying the scripture.
But your body's going through something very physical.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I love that you did that practice about writing a letter to your younger self because that was part of it. It's just naming it and sharing because that's how your brain processes it and moves it into the archival so that you can remember things that happened to you, but you won't feel it. But so interesting. God made us to connect because if you don't talk about it, it doesn't get processed. And I definitely was in denial. I said, I don't need to talk about it. It's actually going to make me feel worse. And I was in denial. But you know what? My body was the last line of defense. It wouldn't let me. So because I was a mom, I actually felt like I had to try. I'm like, fine, like I have to because I had to take care of two kids. So like I wasn't even a believer in it, but you don't have to be a believer. The way God designed our bodies, just like you don't have to be in the mood for a walk. You can go out and be like totally irritable, but after 10 minutes, your brain's going to release those happy hormones and you will feel better. And that's what happened to me in therapy. I was like, I can't believe this, but it's actually working.
Yeah, and you gave so many women, I'm sure, permission to be like, oh, you can see a therapist. I saw a therapist when I was diagnosed with PTSD from childhood trauma.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm still working through triggers like moving. This move, it is a trigger. Like my kids, we had a hard time to find a place because of the market. It was so amazing, right? I remember, I know that now, but when my kids having their clothes in a suitcase and staying in a suitcase was very triggering for me because we were moving all the time when I was a little girl, and I didn't realize how bad it was, right? Like I didn't realize it would make me feel the way that it did. It was my whole body reacted because we lived homeless, like, and so to see my kids like their mattress on the floor and then their clothes in a suitcase and not unpacking because we were staying somewhere temporarily for our this where we're at. It was so traumatic for me. But if the Lord didn't allow me to go through those things, I wouldn't know that I struggled with them to be able to bring them to get help and to
And I
talk about
also
it.
want to affirm you that it's not just struggling, but that it's not because you're not doing something right. It's because you're worthy of healing.
Yeah.
It's because God wants you to prioritize your wellness, your joy,
Yes.
it's something that you didn't have growing up. So it's not that you did something wrong or you're not doing something right. It's more like this is your time. You didn't receive it earlier in your life. And now God says, I want to give you what you didn't receive.
Yeah. And did you enjoy that? I'd love to see you over at ashleyhenriott.com, where you can subscribe to this podcast and channel on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And while you're at it, I'd love to see the value that you found in Confidence in Coffee. So drop the ratings, the reviews in the comments, plus subscribe to this channel and tell a friend too. I'd love to see you over on TikTok or Instagram, where I keep it real in the reels, okay? Make sure you tune in next time on Confidence and Coffee.